Welcome, my fellow thinkers and dreamers. This is Mind Palace Musings, and I am your host, David Wellman. In the previous episode, we talked about a false universe, one that was a simulation that felt real to us as its inhabitants, or as those peering inside without any knowledge or memory of the outside real world. In this episode, we're going to go in a bit of a different direction and talk about this false universe as a dream, still no less real to us than reality or the simulation, but another interesting angle from which to tackle it. So, without further ado, let's get in our boats and row them down the stream, because life is but a dream. As is usual, let's get started with some assumptions. The universe as we know it is an incredibly detailed dream. It may be a shared dream with all humans inside, and maybe even all animals inside participating. Or we may be completely alone, the only actual participant of the dream. But more on that later. Like our own dreams, the timeline can start at any point, and our memories leading up to this point could just be fabrications of the dream. Dreams are defined as a series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. I hope this isn't a concept I really have to explain. It's something everyone has done at least once in their lives, and if you haven't ever had a dream, that maybe you should go talk to some scientists and they can poke and prod you with some sensors and figure out why. But yeah, for the most part, dreams are something we all know what the experience is like. Now, my family actually has somewhat of a history with dreams, as my father wrote his PhD, his thesis, on dreams and death, and maybe I can do some justice to that. So, dreams can range from being distant, vivid, or even lucid for some lucky few who have put in the effort or just have the skill. While we dream, we often do not know that we are dreaming, and if we do realize that we're dreaming, we tend to just accept the strangeness without question. We accept the dream logic at face value. Recently, I had a dream where I was in my bedroom, but half of it was ruined. There was no roof, there was moss, and the floor was caving in, and this just seemed like a normal thing. And I'm sure everyone listening has their own story like this, something that seems completely bizarre according to our real-world logic. But at the time in the dream, it made utmost sense. Why wouldn't my bedroom be half ruined? That doesn't make any sense. When we wake up, we will very quickly forget most of the dream unless we write it down, and even then, most of it will be gone by the time we manage to get pen to paper. The existence of the realm within a dream is often short-lived, and that universe only exists for the duration of your sleep. Now, if you have another dream in the future that seems to pick off where the other one ended, that is either the continuation of this universe or a complete recreation with preceded memories, which may be the same for this material reality. Perhaps this is just another dream, one in which we do not question the reality or internal logic of it. And even if we do accept that it's a dream, it doesn't make it any less real. Our interactions with other beings feel as real as they do in dreams, and just because this world is more structured than our dreams doesn't mean it's structured compared to base reality. We may wake up any day now with a crazy story to tell, if there is indeed anyone to listen in base reality. We can stop and think about the way we are currently living, and even the way that humans have lived in the past. Well, the way that humans have lived in the past according to our memories and written history. For all we know, they never did live and it's all just seeded history. It's false. Smoke. Poof. So yes, we can stop and think clearly about life, and many situations just don't make sense, and yet we continue to live with strange logic. We prioritize greed and rabid consumption over love and empathy. We kill our fellow man because we're told by decrepit lizard people in positions of law and power, and I don't mean lizard people as in they're wearing skin suits and running things from the shadow, but rather their brains are being controlled and driven by some base reptile instinct that seems to prioritize their own power and wealth and hoarding over the prosperity of their nation and those that they have been put in charge of. We would trample each other for more blue thumbs on a virtual screen, more likes on a post, more shares, more follows. Real life as we know it comprises of as much substance as our dreams do, if you really think about it. An argument against the idea that the universe is a dream is object permanence, the thought and, I suppose, debatably provable phenomena that is objects do not stop existing when we go to sleep or stop witnessing them. Now, that being said, I've mentioned before, I have a background in programming and even in some game design. Many games that you play nowadays, and I could even program a simple game to do the same, these games also have object permanence. They've been programmed in such a way that objects continue to exist even when the player is no longer present. If you leave the area and come back later, the objects will still be there where you left them, just like real life. That does not make these video games real. It does not make the worlds inside them real. Or maybe it does, maybe it makes them as real as our world is. There's also a concept in games, while I'm here, might as well, you can learn something, called frustum culling, which is basically only the world that the player can see at any given time is rendered, which means if a character is looking in one direction, everything behind them that they cannot see, that the player cannot see, is completely removed from the world. It no longer exists. Now, we have no way of proving that this isn't how the real world works. We can only prove object permanence by observing objects. If we stop observing them, we don't know if they still exist, because simply by observing an object, we are forcing it to stay there. To prove it exists, we have to observe it, and whether we do that with our eyes or a sensor or a scale, of course, to ensure consistency in the dream or the simulation, the object must stay there. If we were to completely stop observing an object, even without our eyes, without sensors, in such a way that we are not monitoring it, we don't know that it is still there. Or maybe it is, but even then, object permanence may just be a rule within the dream. I'm sure many of you listeners have had dreams where there is some kind of internal logic that cannot be broken. Perhaps in this dream, when people talk, the sound of trumpets come out their mouths instead, or instead of bleeding, bees come out of the wound. I'm sorry, that's terrifying. I regret saying that. Actors and observers, as mentioned in the titular episode, Actors and Observers, and quantum theory all tie in. By observing the object, we are changing the state and ruining any possible chance of proving otherwise. I think object permanence is a very flimsy argument, and object permanence is simply something we learn as we get older. We say that it is a sign of intelligence, babies up to, I don't know, like 6 months, 3 years. I didn't research this, I'm not sure. Babies don't have object permanence, but babies also don't have any social programming, so maybe they have it right. I mean, who cares if the apple still exists in the cupboard or not when I'm not looking? It's going to be there when I go and open the cupboard. It's not my business if it doesn't exist in the time it takes me to use it and not use it. Let that apple be, man. Now, let's look at this from another viewpoint, another one that claims the world is an illusion. And I think it fits in nicely with the whole dream theme, so I'm going to squeeze it into this episode. Solipsism. Some of you may know what the term means, but to quote Wikipedia, solipsism, from Latin solus, meaning alone, and ipse, meaning self, is the philosophical idea that only one's mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological, that's how you say that word, position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside the mind. As the idea goes, I know that I am conscious and existing, and that is literally all I know. Other people might be independently consciousness, or they might not be. This table holding up all my recording equipment might exist, or I might simply just think it exists. All that is ever known to the universe might exist in my head, or maybe not. The very external stimulus that makes me believe I am existing in a world may be supplied by some other being on the outside, or it may be some part of my own godly physiology. Or maybe there is no external world beyond what is in my head, beyond my consciousness, beyond this all-encompassing net that I am both external and internal to. Now, when I say I, just put yourself in that position. I'm speaking for all of us here, or none of us. Who knows? From an absolutely pragmatic standpoint, the only thing we know to be real is our thoughts. Everything else is provided by the previously mentioned external stimuli and is therefore fallible. Psychedelics change the way that their users view the world. Things look different. Perhaps that is removing some form of filter to make the world seem more normal. Then again, normal is a relative term. Now, rejecting material reality does not imply solipsism. Rather, it is to also reject other minds. To say that I am the only true mind is solipsism. A person's personal experiences are necessarily private and will never truly be known by others. It's kind of a fucked up thing to think that even someone you spend your entire life with, you will never truly know them. You will only ever know the person they project out. The only person you'll ever truly know is yourself, your own private thoughts, the first person. You may not even know the person that you project out, because that is an entity created by those that observe you, and it's never something that you yourself really put out there. I mean, sure, you have some control over how people see you, but not all control. And I don't know, that's kind of terrifying. So, as discussed, the mind is all that is known to exist, and our bodies may not even exist or matter, and I discussed that in episode 3 of the podcast. Solipsism was first recorded by the Greek pre-Socratic sophist Gorgias, who is quoted by the Roman sceptic Sextus Empiricus. Try saying that 5 times quickly. He was quoted by the Roman sceptic Sextus Empiricus as having stated, 1. Nothing exists. 2. Even if something exists, nothing can be known about it. And 3. Even if something could be known about it, knowledge about it cannot be communicated to others. We may be nothing but an entity sitting in an empty room, and perhaps on the other side of the room is a small wooden block. We'll never know, because all we can ever experience is the atmosphere floating around our heads, this mind soup we call existence. Much of the point of the sophists was to show that objective knowledge was a literal impossibility. Descartes also championed some of the ideas of solipsism, as his famous quote states, "I think, therefore I am." And he believed everything is comprised of abstractions of the self, projections or analogies. This all obviously goes very much against materialism, which aims to prove the world and all existence through observing the particles of which it is comprised. Materialists will adamantly claim that the world is real because they can sense it, which they believe true due to the belief that they are part of the world they can sense, and therefore their senses are infallible, which there's an argument there. It begs the question if participants inside of a given system are equipped enough to actually study it. Surely we can't claim to know anything about the overarching experiment if we are part of the experiment. And perhaps that is part of being part of it. Dreams require a dreamer, and a dreamer implies base reality outside, and also a reason to dream. As mentioned earlier, the only person we will ever really know is ourselves, and anyone else we ever get to know is a projection of their true selves, or what we are simulating them to be in this dream. Even surrounded by people, we are completely alone, and perhaps this extends out into base reality. Perhaps I or you or we are a lonely god, alone in all of existence. Perhaps we dream so that we might have some company. Perhaps our dream, our universe, our existence are just echoes of the eternal self. Some believe we are all connected, simply living as different facets of the same oneness, of the same thread of consciousness, exploring existence from every different angle. And physical reality may just be a deep distillate of this overarching awareness. That is a lot to unpack, and I'm gonna give you a few seconds to just exist. Perhaps base reality is so cruel and awful that we have to stay in this dream state to stay sane. We may have been born for nothing but suffering, and dreaming a different existence is the only way to cope. Dying may put us back in that hell, only for us to suffer enough again until we can fall back into this dream state. And perhaps this is the eternal hell as the Christians describe it, and we all died long ago. This is our only escape to something that isn't eternal suffering. I discussed this briefly in the first, second, maybe third episode of the podcast ever. Perhaps these are dreams of a dying mind. Perhaps we have already died and our body has thrust us into a dream to hang on to that sliver of existence for as long as it can. As we continue to die, we continue to be thrust into more and more dreams until our original body runs out of fuel. This is the heat death of not only the universe, but of existence. And yes, it is pretty much like the movie Inception. I can see the parallels. So, what are our implications for today? Well, life is as real as you make it. We can't prove other people exist, so we might as well act as they do. It's more fun that way. Don't, I'm not your dad. What awaits us after death could be more exciting or more terrifying than what we experienced in life. Sometimes dreams can make more sense than reality, and oftentimes reality makes more sense than dreams, but that doesn't mean we should discount either. Dreams can be garbled nonsense, but sometimes they might be trying to tell us something. And you should probably give yourself more time to sleep, more time to dream. We live in such busy times where one must also always be hustling, always be on the grind, but we need sleep. Just give yourself some more time to do it. My fellow thinkers and dreamers, my dear seekers of truth and knowledge, thank you for listening. That was another existence spiraling, questioning episode, and in the next one we're going to explore one more facet of potential reasons of existence. I think that makes sense. We are going to explore this not being a simulation, not being a dream, but us actually living in base reality, as unlikely as that potentially might be. What if the world is actually real? What if the materialists and the reductionists are actually right? Well, you can wait until next week to find that out. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave it a like or a comment or a rate. I don't know what platform you're listening to it on. A subscribe would be much appreciated. If you'd like to join the discussion, you can join us over on Reddit at r/mindpalacemusings, or if you'd like to follow a Twitter account for updates, you can follow at mpm_podcast. Otherwise, other details are in the description. As always, this has been Mind Palace Musings. I have been your host, David Wellman. Please stay curious, and thanks for listening.